What's going on, everybody? Josh Engleman for Awesemo.com, and I am back with my NFL DFS contenders, my top fives for each position: defense, wideout, tight end, running back, quarterback. I didn't do that in order, but it's not a big deal. My top fives across the board on FanDuel for this week. Now be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Head to Twitter, follow me at Josh Engleman. Only place you're going to get updates to these sims as we get closer to lock. Let me know in the comment section, who are some of your favorite and least favorite plays for this week? Finally, No House Advantage, the presenting sponsor of this video. Use the promo code Awesemo when signing up. Get yourself a little bit of extra cash on that first deposit. Who doesn't like free money? I know I do. Anyway, we've got the defenses on the screen. We are now off to round out the bottom of my top 10 at tight end. Very clear number one this week. 2 and 3 even separating from the pack a bit, but at the bottom, rounding out the top 10, Dalton Schultz, Evan Ingram, Robert Tonyan, Cameron Brate, and Mike Gesicki on the outside looking in. First up at number 5, we've got $5,900 Noah Fant projected for 8 fantasy points. Nice matchup against Pittsburgh. They are 1-point dogs, 39.5 point total. This is a very difficult matchup. Pitt's defense actually good. Sub 40 point game total, kind of gross, but even still, a 7% chance for Noah Fant to just simply be in an optimal lineup. The price works. At number 4, we've got $6,400 TJ Hawkinson projected for 9 fantasy points. Pretty nice matchup against Minnesota. You expect Detroit to have to throw. They are 10-point underdogs with a 49-point total. Minnesota's defense ranks 17th at PFF. The chances of him going for more than 25 fantasy points is going to be pretty difficult, but at 6,400, he can still be in the optimal 7% of the time and clearly works as a nice bring back against the Vikings. Now we start climbing a little bit faster. $5,200 Jared Cook is in at number 3, projected for 7.5 fantasy points. It's a difficult matchup against Cleveland. 2.5 point favorites, 47-point total, but this is the number 2 defense according to PFF, so you're looking for the value on Cook here, potentially as a second piece of a stack. Maybe you go Keenan Allen plus Cook, something along those lines. 10% chance, though, that he is in the optimal. Jared Cook works pretty well at 5,200. On to the number 2 spot, we've got George Kittle, 6,500, projected for 10.5 fantasy points. Nice fantasy matchup against Arizona. They're slightly better than average defensively, but 5-point dogs with a 49-point total. You're expecting San Francisco to have to throw here. The problem is their offense in general, not very good. 13% likelihood that George Kittle is in the optimal. Normally that's pretty good. That's enough to get him to the number 2 spot, but he's not even close to number 1. 22% of the time, you got to get to Darren Waller, 7,400, projected for 13.5 fantasy points. They're 5.5 point favorites against Chicago, middle of the pack total, but this is a top 10 offense going against a average defense. 4.5% of the time, he can go for more than 25 fantasy points. That's not something you see on most of these tight ends, but a 22% likelihood that he is in the optimal. He just gets so much more work than any of these tight ends, and 7,400 is not all that problematic of a price tag. So while he is the optimal more frequently than anybody else, still 78% of the time you need somebody else. Either way, Waller, number 1. Now we're on to wide receiver, which looks a lot like tight end. We've got one clear guy at the top and relatively flat throughout the rest of the top 10. Chris Godwin, Kenny Golladay, Amari Cooper, Justin Jefferson, and Keenan Allen round out the bottom of that top 10. Coming off a pretty big week last week, DJ Moore is in at number 5, 7,900, projected for 15.5 fantasy points. Really nice matchup against Philly. 44.5 point total. You'd like to see a little bit higher, but either way, it's the number 20 defense for the Eagles. You're not all that worried about it. We saw Tyreek Hill pick them apart. Not to say that DJ Moore is anything like Tyreek Hill. 10% chance that he goes for more than 25 fantasy points. 14% likelihood he is in the optimal. I love DJ Moore. The price tag feels a little high, but just based on the way that this slate plays out, he's still one of the best wide receivers you could roster this week. If you need to save a little salary, you can probably go to Brandon Cooks at number 4, 6,300, projected for just 12.5 fantasy points, but 9-point dogs and a 39.5 point total. None of that looks good, but Houston's going to have to throw pretty much the whole game. Cooks should be able to benefit from that. This is the dead last offense at PFF against the number 21 defense right now. 2.5% chance that Cooks goes for more than 25 fantasy points. That would obviously be pretty nice if you have him. 15% chance, though, that he's in the optimal. The price is too low for the volume that he should see this week. At number 3, we're staying in the same game, going to Jacoby Myers, just 5,900, projected for 12.5. They are 9-point favorites. That looks pretty good against the number 30 ranked defense. He can get over 25 fantasy points about 2% of the time, but because of that $5,900 price tag, Myers works if you need to save salary. 17% likelihood that he is in the optimal. We're off to Dallas now at number 2. CeeDee Lamb, it's nice to see, 6,900. Like I said, it's nice to see. Projected for 14 fantasy points, 7-point favorites, 52-point total. Now that's what we're talking about against the number 26th ranked defense. That's what we're looking for. But still, CeeDee Lamb, not even close to number 1. He's got a 6% chance to go for more than 25 fantasy points. He's got a 17% chance to be in the optimal. All of this looks great. Everybody in this top 10, I'm really happy to get to, but I'm not happier to get to anyone other than this number 1 guy, who is clearly the number 1 wide receiver this week. That would be $8,200 Davante Adams, projected for 18.5 fantasy points. Matchup is a middle-of-the-pack Bengals defense per PFF, 50.5 game total. You love to see it. 26% likelihood he goes for more than 25 fantasy points. That's why you're getting to Adams, because he has an unrivaled ceiling. 27% chance he's in the optimal. Again, CeeDee Lamb is at 17%. Adams is well north. Don't overthink it. Davante Adams, clearly the top wideout this week. Quite different at running back, however, very flat from top to bottom. Aaron Jones, Austin Eckler, Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry, and Saquon Barkley are rounding out that top 10. There's not a lot of separation here. The difference between 21% in number 1 and Barkley at 17% is like an extra catch. I don't want to get too bogged down here. I like everything we're about to talk about. You just have to pay very close attention to the ownership and the type of contest you're entering. Number 5 gives us Damian Williams, 5,800, projected for 13 fantasy points. They're 5.5-point dogs, 44.5-point total. This is the number 10 defense, so not a lot of this looks great outside of Damian Williams' price. If this game stays close, though, I think that he has a pretty high floor. He's only going over 25 fantasy points 2.5% of the time, so I don't want to go too crazy there. 18% likelihood, however, that he is in the optimal. There are a lot of guys you can pay up for this week. Damian Williams makes it easier to do so. He's the number 1 running back on DraftKings this week, but number 4 on FanDuel, that would be Leonard Fournette, 6,400, projected for 14 fantasy points. Big favorites here for Tampa, 10 points, 48-point total. You expect the Bucs to run the football, particularly in the second half. So if Fournette can get into the end zone, couldn't even talk. If Fournette can get into the end zone in the first half, that's going to pay big dividends as the game moves on. 6% chance to go for more than 25 fantasy points. 18% chance that he is simply in the optimal lineup. Leonard Fournette gets to number 4. Very different play at number 3 because we have this 3-way tie, 3, 4, 5, but Kamara is at the top of the heap, 8,600, projected for 18 fantasy points. It's going to be a tight game, 2.5-point favorites, 43.5-point total. Saints offense hasn't been all that great. Washington's defense, middle of the pack, but a 21% chance that Kamara can go for more than 25. An 18% chance that he goes into the optimal lineup. Whether you're going to Kamara, Fournette, Williams, you've got somebody in all 3 different salary tiers that you can get to, all with the exact same odds of being in the optimal lineup. We're off to Jacksonville now for James Robinson at number 2, 7,400, 15.5 fantasy point projection. Great matchup against Tennessee. Jacksonville slight underdogs, 4.5 points, 48.5 point total sounds great. Their offense stinks, they're 30th, but Tennessee's defense also stinks, 28th. 12% chance that James Robinson can go for more than 25. A 20% chance that he is in the optimal. Even though this is Jacksonville, I don't mind all that much. James Robinson is my number 2 running back. At number 1, however, we're going to Najee Harris, 7,300, projected for 16 fantasy points. Very difficult fantasy matchup. I think he's going to get overlooked a bit. They are slight favorites, but it's a 39.5-point total. That is putrid for this particular slate. Pittsburgh's offense, also putrid. 31st in the league. Roethlisberger's terrible. It's a number 8 defense for Denver. None of those signs look great. However, Harris's workload is just there. The targets, definitely there. 13.5% chance that he goes for more than 25 fantasy points. 21% chance that he is in the optimal lineup. I didn't expect it on FanDuel, yet here we are. Najee Harris is my number 1 running back. Now, before we get to the quarterbacks, one last reminder, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Head on over to Twitter and follow me at Josh Engleman. Only place you're going to get the updates to these sims as we get closer to lock. You'll see those in between the first look show at 9 o'clock in the morning on Sunday and live before lock at noon. Finally, let me know in the comment section, who are your favorite and least favorite plays for this week? We're rounding it out at quarterback with Mac Jones, Jalen Hurts, Ryan Tannehill, Tom Brady, and Derek Carr on the outside looking in. The top three have separated from the back pack, including my number one guy, which I don't think will be all that surprising. Here we go, everybody. Let's close it out. Number 5, we've got Justin Herbert. Tough spot, though. 7,700, projected for 20 fantasy points. 47-point total, which is something you're looking for. You expect Herbert to throw because that is what Justin Herbert does. Still just the 16th ranked offense at PFF. Going up against the number 2 defense. Very scary matchup, but 12% likelihood that he can score more than 25 fantasy points. A 6% chance that he will be in the optimal. This one's easy for me. I will happily get to Justin Herbert all year, regardless of matchup. This one's probably going to be popular. Number 4, Kirk Cousins, 7,500, projected for 20 fantasy points. The best matchup you're going to find. 10-point favorites, 49-point total, dead last defense at PFF against the Lions. 12% chance to go for more than 25. 7% chance to be in the optimal, which I know everybody's going to think sounds low. That's just what happens at quarterback individually. It's a flat position, more or less. But Thielen, Jefferson, you know you like stacking up Kirk Cousins. Hell, bring Van Jefferson into the mix. Either way, Cousins looks great and looks easily stackable. He's number 1 on DraftKings. He's number 3 here. $7,400 Daniel Jones popping up. 20.7 fantasy point projection. Great matchup here against Dallas. They're 7-point dogs, so they're going to throw. 52-point game total, so there's going to be fantasy points. Number 24 ranked defense, so you know Dallas isn't going to stop them. 16% likelihood that he's over 25 fantasy points, but just a 10% chance that he's in the optimal. I like going to Daniel Jones because you can easily bring it back with Zeke, with CeeDee Lamb, with Amari Cooper. Or you can go to the other guy under center and grab Dak Prescott at 8,100, projected for 22.7 fantasy points. The matchup's even better for Dallas, 7-point favorites, same total. 26th ranked defense, which means the Giants aren't stopping anybody either. 31% of the time, though, Dak is going to have more than 25 fantasy points. That's enough to get him to 12% likelihood of the optimal and into the number 2 slot. It's almost number 1, but not quite. That number 1 guy would be Kyler Murray, 8,500, so you're going to have to pay a pretty heavy price for it, but 24.3 fantasy point projection. Good matchup against San Francisco, I guess. 5-point favorites, 49-point total. That's the good. 9th ranked defense at PFF. That's the less good, I guess you can say. This is what matters most. 45% of the time, Kyler Murray will score 25 fantasy points. 16% of the time, he'll be in the optimal. If we're talking a cash game situation and you have the salary, I do like Kyler here. It's probably more likely to be Daniel Jones, but for right now, Kyler Murray is more likely to be in the optimal lineup than any other quarterback. Alrighty, folks, that will do it. Those are my NFL DFS top 5s on FanDuel for week 5. There's a DraftKings version of this video around here somewhere. Make sure you're checking it out. Make sure you're hitting that like button too. I'll have updates up on Sunday. Plus, Sunday night football contenders will be out Sunday morning. Obviously, keep your eyes peeled for that. Good luck this weekend. We'll talk to you then Sunday morning.